Okay, we're back. So you were getting ready. I cut you off. You're getting ready to talk about culture of embarrassment, reputation. So the next thing I have ready to ask, and this is part of my the written component of this project I'm doing. When I was thinking about China, I thought, okay, what are three sort of big major components of Chinese culture? And the three I came up with were face, collectivism, and Confucianism. And I think where you're heading is kind of on the topic of face. So if you want to just continue and then explain what you think face is and how this relates to what you're getting ready to say, I just wanted to kind of preface that. But now I'll hand it over to you. So what is face? What were you going to say about reputation, embarrassment, all that? Go for it.
Okay. Um, so we have the expression in the West, he's just trying to save face. We say that in a way like to avoid embarrassment, like something went wrong and now you're trying to make it look less bad. Here, when you do something incorrect, their public shaming is normal, right? Before I go to the students, I'll go back to teaching. I was observing this camp one time. It's not the one that we were at, but some employees were late and to a meeting. So the boss made each of them go up individually in front of the whole room and explain why they were late. They had to bow down with their heads down and like solemnly explain why they were late. And then the person just berated them in front of everybody and like told them they're going to get fired if they do this again and just try to ridicule them in front of everybody.
Oh,
Yeah, and that was really like, oh man. So when I talked to so I witnessed that myself. Like, man, that's not cool. That was really uncomfortable. I don't know how much that helps. Really, we'll see. But so at the schools I was working at, I told some people about that, and they're like, oh. You don't see what we see because you're a foreign teacher and they treat you very nicely and kindly. But how we get treated, if we do something wrong, they make everyone know about it, and that's how they prevent, that's how they think they're inspiring you to not make a mistake again by
huh.
embarrassing you so much in front of everybody that you will not do it again. So that makes going back to the classroom, I assume that that happens at every level of your life, right? So when it goes back to the classroom, you're going to be terrified to express yourself or say something. And if someone says that you're wrong and embarrasses you in front of everyone, that's going to be so scary to actually, show yourself ever.
Right, right. Yeah. I think that's pretty interesting way of thinking about it. Yeah, I definitely think of it as being embarrassment and just this concern about reputation and not looking like in a classroom setting, not looking foolish or unprepared, and yeah, they really. I was telling another guy I was talking with earlier, like when I think of the West, I feel like at least I grew up, and I think a lot of people did with these ideas about first of all, practice makes perfect. If you're learning something, you're going to make mistakes along the way, and it's the journey, not the destination. And I think that's part of our culture. I also think we have all these sayings about sometimes like swallow your pride, or pride comes before a fall, and we discourage, I think, or at least we try to discourage either having too much pride or also being afraid of making mistakes. There's a famous Michael Jordan quote about how many games he's lost and how many shots he's missed, and as a result, that's why he's successful. And I feel like that's kind of embedded in the Western psyche. But yeah, I feel like in China they're so concerned with their image and their reputation, and so worried about making a mistake or embarrassing themselves that they will do sort of anything to avoid that. And a lot of people are saying that's sort of how this coronavirus pandemic started to spread. Is the government wanted to save face, so they tried to deny it and suppress it, and they were silencing the whistleblower doctors, and then they started saying, oh, America imported it to Wuhan, and then they tried to blame Italy, and pointing fingers at everybody else. And I feel like that's a very Chinese thing, is always sort of, deflect blame, and I guess it can manifest in different ways. Again, I'm sort of rambling, but does any of that resonate, or do you feel the same way? Do you feel differently about anything I said?
No, I would say that's pretty much what happened. And so when I talk to other people here, yeah, they really do believe that. You know, recently I talked to someone about what's happening in America with the virus now, and how I was getting treated here as a foreigner. People were treating me very poorly. We can come back to that later, the
Sure.
experience I had with that. But I was explaining that to them, and she was like, "Well, that's what you get because your country did this." And I was like, "What?" But the virus started here in China. And she's like,
Right.
"What makes you what?" No, but then she said, "What makes you think it started in China?" And I was like, because I've
Facts.
been here. Yeah, I haven't left for 2 years." And she's like, "Well, we're pretty sure that it came from America." And I was like, "Oh, okay." That's when I realized
Ridiculous. Yeah.
there's no point in talking to you anymore,
Right.
because that's just, you already have absolved. I mean, not her as a person, but as a country, have absolved yourself of any responsibility. It's like
Right.
it didn't even start here. So it started in America, and now America's getting what they get because that's what they get for trying to bring it here. And oh man, that's sad. But yeah, like there was a person here in my city during the outbreak that supposedly broke protocol for where he traveled, and then he came back and didn't tell anybody properly, and then he actually had the virus and spread it to a few people here, and they posted his photo all over social media, like, "This guy did this and he should be shamed."
Wow.
Supposedly the government released it. I don't know if that's true, because again, this is hearsay, but this was going around everywhere that this person did this, and I was like, man, that's not cool. He did that. It's also kind of crazy to publicly shame him, like in the same way that I told you those employees were being shamed. This person is like, "Okay, everyone, look what this person did. Let's all shame him."
Right.
Um, so yeah, it's a very strange thing. What you said about American culture, I think applies to me and you, but today it's a little different. Like this, I'm sure you've heard the phrase cancel culture,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So this shaming of anything or anything you've ever done bad has become so rampant in America now. I would also be afraid to say anything ever, because of 5 years from now, or out of context, I'm gonna have my life ruined because I said something bad. You know, uh,
Right.
so yeah, that shaming thing. For me and you, for growing up, because we're in our 30s, I believe, like we
Well,
had.
I used to be in my 30s, but
Okay, I'm,
recently, yeah. But
okay,
yeah,
I'm 37. I'm 37, so we're close in age. Okay,
we are.
yeah. So we grew up at a time where it's like, okay, it's all right to make mistakes, and you can learn from them and grow. Whereas now it seems like, oh, you made a mistake 10 years ago, your life is over.
Destroy
Um,
him.
yes, yeah. So it's yeah. So I try to be critical of America because I love America and I want it to improve. And there's many bad things and good things about it. But yeah, bringing it back to China is they don't want to be critical about themselves at all.
Right. Right. And I feel like this might have something to do with, again, I think self-criticism is important, and maybe I think there might be something to this though, but I feel like, China, they love to boast that we're 5,000 years of history and culture.
Hmm.
And I think, great, how old is America? Not even 1,000 years old, not even 500 years old. And I think, but look at all the innovations and technology that American in its short history. And again, we're standing sometimes on the shoulders of giants, and we've inherited things from Europe and stuff. I get all that, but America put a man on the moon before anybody. When you look at Olympics, America's usually number one, and I think if you look at all the medals and the total history, America's got like the most gold medals, and that's in such a short history. And then again, China's got this long history, but they just sort of so many things that they have, they've just adapted or appropriated or imported from Western culture. And I think it's because, if you're very, very collective, very, very uniform, you don't like to criticize, you don't like to try different things, you might not progress. Whereas, again, in America, I think we do, at least maybe not as much recently, but we do welcome different ideas, and we do have, freedom of speech, freedom to try. And I think that because of the ideology, America has done so many amazing things in such a short history, whereas China, I don't know. I mean, again, they have done some good things in their history, but I feel like so much of the modern world has come from U.S. innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Chinese technology. When we talk about 5,000 years ago to 1,000 or 500, there's been some amazing things that have happened in China that have gone westward that kind of made Europe become better as well. But for the modern world, I was talking to the same person who was saying that the virus happened in America. I was talking to her about Chinese culture. She was telling me about, well, Chinese culture this, Chinese culture that. And I was like, well, what is Chinese culture? Because if you look at the way you're dressed and the government type and even your military uniforms, like, this is all Western stuff,
Right, right.
so what the pressure that you're putting on yourself to be Chinese, a lot of these ideas are not even Chinese. Like, I love Taoism, but no one here wants to be Taoist anymore. Like,
Right, right.
so
And I bet she was saying it to you in English as well.
yes, we were definitely having that. Well, because I can't speak Chinese, so that's my fault.
Right.
But
And like they often, refer to like Marx as an authoritative figure. And then I think, out of one side of their mouth, they're like, China's so great. Anyway, so Marx said, and I'm like, huh, that's interesting. Like there does seem to be sometimes like a disconnect.
yeah, and I could segue that into talking about the Philippines. So it's a whole, we can have that conversation another time. This idea of my culture and who I am, and I don't like this, but you totally adopt all of it. So yeah, Chinese culture is very interesting in that way, that there's this rich, long history that they romanticize and they really like, but a lot of the modern world, their wants and desires and structure, come from, like, yeah, modern thought. That a lot of it came from
Right,
the West. So
right.
to go back to how they kind of mix this with the past, I guess we can kind of segue that into Confucianism.
Yeah, we could either do collectivism or Confucianism. Just whatever you want to say about it. Like, just what is your start with either one. Choose one. Confucianism, collectivism. Sort of what's your understanding of that, and how do you think it sort of manifests in China's culture and schools?
Yeah, so when I think about the marrying of Confucianism to modern politics, the reason why it works well is because of collectivism. I mean, so trying to marry that all together. So
Okay.
my basic understanding of Confucianism, the 1 minute version, is that your personal relationships is a microcosm for society as a whole,
Uh-huh.
right? So there's this thing called the five relationships, right? Where
Right.
how you
Right.
should act with your friends, how you should act with your brother, how you should act with your parents, how you should act with your spouse, and then if everyone does that correctly, the relationship between the citizen and the government should be very harmonious. Because if each person individually is doing this properly, then everything should be harmonious, right?
Right. And they use that phrase a lot. Harmonious society.
Yeah. And so within that, this is a Japanese phrase, but it applies here. The nail that stands out gets hammered down.
Right.
So there's this idea that collectivism is where you are part of a unit. So your individual, I'm not saying individuals don't matter, but the group matters way more than you.
Yes.
So
Yes.
and you have a responsibility in that group to perform your certain duties or function to make sure as a whole the machine operates well. So by having these Confucian ideals where you are part of this group, and in this group this is your job and you have to do this thing, otherwise you get shamed.
Right.
and
Right.
and so working that into a communist view, which is kind of strange because the economy here is not very communist anymore, but that's
Right.
another conversation. But the idea, whatever, traditionally or culturally communist, it fits well, I think, with Confucianism.
Yeah, I've
I think
thought
there's a
that as well. Yeah, like the whole they adopted certain things from the Soviet Union because I think it does sort of work with the psyche or the history, the mentality.
yeah. So there to say that there's no individualism is not true. It's just not promoted, right?
Okay.
And if you're able to become successful, I guess here's the thing, like it's in America, whatever. If your kid tells you he wants to be a singer, you're gonna be like, oh man, right? Until they become famous, right? Then like, oh, I always knew he could do it, and he's the best, and he's the greatest, and we love him. But everyone who
Right.
fails at becoming a singer, like, oh god, right?
Right.
So there are the people that break through, and once they have earned the respect, that oh wow, that was great. Oh, what a great person. But most people who fail at those endeavors, you think of them as losers, right?
Right. Right.
So here, I think that fear is a little more pronounced because you have a lot more expectations and responsibility to your family than we do in America. I mean, you and I are abroad by ourselves. I mean, we have relationships, but I mean, I don't think you're sending money back home to people who are gonna die if you don't do it. Maybe you are.
Right.
I don't know, but
No,
a
I'm
lot
not.
of people. Okay, so a lot of people don't. I mean, in the Philippines, it's opposite. Like it's more like China, where there people are doing that. Like they're,
Yeah,
you know,
my wife's
60% of the time.
Filipino and
Yeah.
she does. So that's yeah, yeah.
So you know that thing. So you know that situation. But
Sure.
so they have this much different pressure than we do. We do have this. We have the freedom to actually pursue being an individual, where um, you have this overbearing responsibility to be a part of this unit forever and continue
Yeah.
it, and they can't escape it as easy as you or I can.
And in that sense, I think they kind of got it better than us because they do have this more, some of these cultures like three generations under one roof, like the grandparents, the parents and the kids or whatever, and everyone sort of takes care of each other. And then, you raise the kids and then they take care of you in old age because you took care of them as a child. And I kind of like that because I feel like in the West, there's more of this, okay, you're 18, get out of my house and go get a job. And then it's like several years later, okay, you're retired. I'm putting you in a nursing home. And I kind of don't think that's maybe the best in that sense. I do kind of think, the what I see in Asian cultures or some of these Far Eastern cultures is maybe a better system than sometimes what we do in the West.
So yeah, there's definitely positives and negatives, right?
Sure.
I think it's way better. I was, 18 the day I graduated, figure it out for yourself kind of life. But that's when my mom died. When my mom died when I was
Oh,
younger.
okay.
So
Okay.
if that was the case, I probably would have more of a Filipino structure. Like so, I grew up with a Filipino structure and then became American instantly, right? When my mom died.
Oh,
So and I talk about that with my students. Like, okay, so I have this Asian ideal of like family and how things work, and then I was like, oh, now you're on your own. So yeah. So you know you get more support growing up and help. Like if you have kids, they can help watch your kids. They'll maybe help you buy your first home or go to college and have a place to stay while you're doing these things. So it is a little more expected to take care of them in your old age. But if your parents ship you off and do nothing for you and then expect to be taken care of later, it's like, well, you totally stopped helping me.
right,
So
right.
I mean, I don't want to do it out of spite, but like man, so
Sure. Well, that's why I mean, in
so the
in the
situation's not
social
good. Yeah.
sense, yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I think in the social sense, it it's generally a good thing. I don't see that as a bad thing at all. Like again, families as a unit. But where I think it can be a bad thing in China, for example, is like this sort of collective, like ideological collectivism. Like everyone's sort of, and this is, I think, sort of Confucianism and social harmony and stability, and it's like a lot of things rolled into one. But I think there is a lot of collective thought, and people often have similar or identical opinions. For example, there's been so many times and at different schools in different parts of China over the years where I've gone around asking students a question and almost everybody gives me the same response. Or for example, I taught high school kids in Beijing for a couple of years, and sometimes on a Monday I would go around asking them, or I would take roll and I would say, so what did you do over the weekend? And the first student would say, eat, sleep, play game. Okay. Next student, what did you do over the weekend? Eat, sleep, study. Okay, what did you do over the weekend? Eat, sleep. What did you do over the weekend? Eat, sleep, play. And I'm just, all right, I'm not going to ask anymore. Have you had experiences like that where it's just like, oh my gosh, if you're, and part of it might be a language thing, sometimes language limitations, but I feel like if you're in an American classroom, what did you do over the weekend? Oh, I watched some movies and blah, blah, blah. What did you do? Oh, I went and played, golf or baseball. What did you, you're going to get some variety, but I feel like in China, so often it's like having 50 people just say the same thing, and it can be tiresome, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of variety and opinions. And anyway, I think you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. So from a personal standpoint, about talking about the freedom versus the family, is the bad thing is you basically have no choice over what you want to do with your life unless you have a if your family happens to be a certain way. But even being Filipino, like when I say, oh, I'm going to be a teacher, you know how much pressure I had to become a nurse. Like everyone just wants you to be a nurse. Like,
Oh
just be a
man.
nurse already. Just be a nurse. Like even when I finally got, I got a new job at a new school. You can still be a nurse. I'm like, come on, I don't want to be a nurse. So, and that's even me on my own. That's just my family still trying to put that pressure in. But when you have like, financial obligation and you're really part of a household income and your family is collectively working together, you don't really get to do those things. Like I never would have been able to become a sumo wrestler and travel around the world and also write comic books. There's no way that would have happened if I was in this collective family unit. I'd be working at a job I probably don't like just to keep the machine going with enough money to do everything right, and that
Good
sucks.
point. Good point. And
So
I'd like to point out for any future audience, because eventually people will hear this.
yeah,
You're not joking when you say you're not. It's not hype. It's not like you're not using sumo wrestler as a joke or an example. You literally have been a sumo wrestler, correct?
yeah, I always forget that. Whenever I tell people I'm a sumo wrestler, they just think because I'm fat, I'm making a joke about myself. No, I actually, no, it's true. Yeah, I forget about that. They go, haha, sumo. I'm like, no, no. So I actually represented the United States at the 2017 World Games. It's like the Olympics, but it's run by the IOC, and they just have different sports. It's once every 4 years type thing. And so I got to do that, and I got to travel to a bunch of other countries. I got to be in a couple movies and commercials and wrestle in
Oh, cool.
Tajikistan and Azerbaijan, all these cool things. That never would have happened if I was just like, do what you're told.
And
Um,
again, I think that kind of goes back to my point about why I think the modern world, a lot of it came from sort of Western and American cultures, because we do sort of allow, and it depends sometimes maybe on the family, but a lot of people do encourage that, like pursue your dreams, pursue your happiness, do what you're passionate about. And again, I think as a result, yeah, that's why a lot of great things and popular things and popular culture have emerged from a country like America instead of China. I was talking to someone earlier and I mentioned, like a lot of popular music, popular movies, fashion, a lot of these things come from America because there is so much, I think, individuality, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree, and that it kind of circles back to what we were saying earlier. Though, is people want to be individual without putting in any work, and those become the jerks, right? Those are the ones who want I want to be respected, and I want people to hear me, but I don't want to actually put in the effort. I don't want to do the hard work part. So that's yeah. There's always a two sides to every coin.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So the second part to what I wanted to say kind of talks about what I would say for a teacher coming to teach in China. What would I tell them? That kind of
Uh-huh.
relates to this is that um, the students are almost. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I would say depressed.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
because I mean, I was at a boarding school. That means they live there. That means morning to night they are structured and they have like 10-hour academic days. So when
Yeah.
they come to me, they're not like they're happy to see me. Like in America, they're like, "Hey, Mr. W, oh man, let's do this. It's gonna be so fun. I did this yesterday, and after school, me and my dad went to do this." It's like they're in prison, and here
Mm.
they are at their next thing. Like, oh god, and they're like just keeping them awake was like,
Yeah.
I felt bad waking them up, but they're like, I'm like, what's wrong with you? I bring them out in the hall. What's wrong? Why can't you stay awake in my class? Like,
Right.
well, you know, and then because I'm thinking in America, what if a kid was sleeping in my class? And this kid's like, well, I I stayed up until 2 a.m. studying, and then
Right.
and now I'm here, and I was like, oh, you're not being a jerk.
You're
You're
not being
just
negligent. Yeah.
yeah, your life is just incredibly structured from morning till night, 7 days a week, and you have no freedom and no fun.
Yeah.
So you
And that's one
really
reason
are have
that's one reason why a lot of students, not all, but a lot of students do kind of look forward to having a Western teacher because we generally do try to have more fun in class and play games and things like that. Like I've had a lot of students that, they're so excited when it's time for like my class because maybe they get a chance to, yeah, play a game or do something different. You know what I mean?
yeah. We at the school I was at too. There's these hall monitors, which are adults. They're walking by class to make sure no kids are doing anything bad, and they just come in my room like, why is this kid doing this? Why is this kid doing this? I'm like, because I said it was okay, Then so but because like if the kid's like looking at his iPad for a second, or I let him put his head down, like they're just constantly having prison guards on them all the time, and it was really depressing me because I'm like, how am I supposed to? This is not my philosophy of education. I cannot teach this way, which is why I switched to teaching college. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Interesting.
but but for teaching, if you're coming to teach in China and you're going to be at a private school, especially a boarding school, they're not going to be happy and bubbly. They're good kids, but I just mean their energy sometimes is so drained because they have zero freedom of time, expression, or creativity.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I think most foreign teachers who've been in China for 6 months or longer have had similar observations. And
Yeah.
and that brings me up to another point. You were talking. The school I started working at in September of 2019, before crazy 2020. Also a
Mhm.
boarding school for I think primary through high school, and I teach middle school and high school there. But yeah, they live on campus, and they're like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. till 7 or 8 p.m. And I think they get their 2 hour nap in the middle of the day. But yeah, it's just like all day. And I've often thought that I feel like in China, when they think of education, they emphasize quantity. It's all about the more hours, the better. Be in school all day, all day, all day. Okay, it's the weekend, so now we're going to send you to weekend school. And I feel like in America, sometimes maybe we miss the mark on this, but I feel like we emphasize quantity less, and we think about quality more. We want the quality of education to be good. We want the teachers to be good. We want the environment to be, conducive to learning and accepting and inclusive. And I think in America we have the saying, work smarter, not harder. But I feel like in China, it's just like, work harder all the time. Harder is better.
Yeah, and it's not. Uh, I have a few comparisons I can say for that. Like, um, I'm sure you've realized being here that asking someone how much money they make is not offensive, right?
Right.
People
And I
ask
hate
that all
that.
the time.
I hate that. Yeah.
So people ask me all
And
the time,
it's,
and so yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, I
Okay,
was just
so
going to
some
say, I
hey,
think,
you go first. You go
I'll,
first.
all right, I'll make my little joke. No,
Yeah.
I got this little joke, and this has literally happened to me where sometimes like the three questions in China I get are, "What's your name? Where are you from? And what's your salary?"
Yeah.
In that order, and I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we're already there." Okay, but yeah, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. Go ahead.
No, okay, so I was making more money at the private school I was at, but I was working a lot of hours. So someone asked me recently, I went out to dinner with this group of strangers. That's how that happened is the whole story. But they asked me how much money I make, and I said I make about 10,000 RMB, and they're like, "No way, that's way too little for what you're doing." And I was like, "Yeah, but I only work 15 hours a week." you
Right,
know
right.
but so they're like, "That's why don't you want to make more money?" I was like, "Well, how much money do you make?" And they're like, "We make the same as you." And I was like, "Yeah, but how many hours do you work?" Well, they work 7 days a week, 10 hours a day to make the
Right.
same amount of money as me. But they're confused why I would not choose to work another 60 hours to make even more money, where I'm like, I'm
Uh-huh.
already living your life with one fifth the amount of time.
Right.
um, so this culture of difficulty, like if you're not struggling or in pain, you're not doing it right. Right? It's
Huh.
like it's and so when you're talking about quantity, it's just like the same thing. Like so I told you I was a sumo wrestler. I just lost like 90 pounds. Okay, so
Oh,
I've been
wow.
exercising a lot, and I used to do hundreds of push-ups. And when I was younger and I used to be more athletic, and now I'm like, man, I realized I was doing them all wrong. Like I wasn't doing them
Uh-huh.
with good form. So now when I do 20 really good push-ups, it's way better than doing whatever 50, 70, or whatever it is, because I'm just like, I'm doing this thing that I feel like, yeah, I did 100 or I did 200. I'm like, oh, I did 20, and everyone's going to be like, you did 20 push-ups, so what? It's like, yeah, do them slow and with proper form, and then see what you think. So like the
Yeah.
quality versus quantity thing, it's a mindset here where it's like you need to be working all the time, regardless of how much money you make. That's not the point. You need to be working all the time, or you're not doing a good job. You're not being a good person, almost.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. And it almost brings to mind, I don't know if this is relevant or not, I might be off here, but there's that expression, I think, and the pronunciation I can't get right, but chur ku, like literally eat bitterness or eat vinegar or something like that.
I know chur. I don't know how to say bitterness, but chur is correct for eating.
Yeah, I
So,
think I think it's
yeah.
chur, and I think it's like a phrase Mal used to use about, yeah, eat bitterness, or I don't know, but I don't know, maybe I shouldn't go down that route. You know
I
what?
think
I
it's
want to.
relevant to what I'm saying, though. Like, it's like this
Okay.
idea of like, I mean, like, if that's what he meant or not, I'm not sure if that's how that phrase works. But I do see it's like if you are not putting yourself through pain, then you are not doing it right.
Right, right. In fact, I pulled up my Plico dictionary, so let me try to look this phrase up since we're talking about, yeah, churku. Yeah, again, I'm probably saying it wrong. Churku. It's a verb. It says bear hardships, suffer, come to grief, bear hardships and stand hard work hard and endure hardships. Yeah, that does seem
Yeah.
like something I've come across.
Yeah, and we do that in America too. Like, and we honor it so much. Like, my mom worked 3 jobs to bring me up, and yeah, that's really admirable. But it also sucks. It sucks for her
Right.
that her life was that way. And then if you put yourself in a situation where you have to do it also, I think that defeats the point. I would hope that mother wanted you to change your. She did that so you can have a better life and
Right.
not
And,
have
and
to do that punishment. but it
Right.
just continues. It just continues. Like, okay, now I have to do that for my kids, and I have to do that, and so it's not even about the working to make a better life. It's now just like I have to endure this punishment because this is this signifies I'm a good person.
Yeah, it's almost like suffering for its own sake, maybe, or working for its own sake rather than a
Yeah,
means to an end. Because I feel like, yeah, in the West, a lot of people, I don't know if this is a modern expression or an old expression. I think it's a modern expression. People talk about it's good to have a work-life balance. And I think that's a good approach. Again, find this balance of, work, be responsible, be productive, but enjoy life too. It's not all about work and money and these temporal things because then we end up dying. And some people say I've seen like this post on Facebook that I'd rather have a passport full of stamps than a house full of stuff.
yeah,
And all work and no play, right? So I do think in the West we do, and I think like the Puritans or the Pilgrims who went to America sort of had this work ethic, but I also think a lot of Americans, we also appreciate leisure time and hobbies. Hobbies are a big part of American culture. Hobbies seem almost non-existent in China. A lot of people have told me, and I've seen this too, if sometimes you ask Chinese people what their hobbies are, they don't know. Or I've had people, again, students say, oh, eating and sleeping. And I say, eating and sleeping aren't hobbies. These are life functions. That's
yeah.
everybody does it. Like, what else do you do? Study. Okay, well, study's not really a hobby. What else? Play a game. Okay. Like,
Yeah, there are some big. I mean, people play basketball and ping pong and badminton and stuff like that. But even that, it's not free. Like it's very structured. You can play for 30 minutes right now and then get back to work. Like for me,
right.
it's like it was like a part. It was like a lifestyle thing. These hobbies were a lifestyle. It's like it was part of my identity, not like oh my
Yeah,
god, I
yeah,
have.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like in prison, like when they give them yard time,
Yeah,
like
oh,
to
that's a
go.
good analogy. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's how their hobbies are here. It's like I go to lessons and it sucks. I don't get to go play with my friends. It's not so yeah. Um yeah, so that kind of Puritan work ethic, and in America you see that less now, but I remember seeing lots of retired people, like when they finally retire from work, they don't know what to do with themselves because they never found an identity. Their identity was just working, and that's who they were. And I
Right.
think it's way more rampant here that there's a phrase I don't called 996, I believe. And now the joke now is called 997, where the youth are kind of rebelling against this idea because it sucks. So 996 means you work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. That's your life
Right.
here.
Right.
Yeah. So and now it's 7 days a week for some people if you're in technology. Um, so and that's just the way things are here. And they'll say things like, well, you need to sacrifice for your country or for your family, for the good of the company, for the good of something not you,
Right.
to
Right.
make it better. And if you don't, you're not a good person.
But
That's
you know what I find ironic though, and Japan is similar in that way. Japan's got this, work ethic. They actually have a word for dying from working too hard. Like they literally have a word for it. But
yeah.
have you been to Japan?
I have not, strangely enough, I'm a sumo
Okay.
wrestler.
Yeah, ironic. Anyway,
Yeah.
I've lived in Japan and China. And the stereotypes about Japan are generally positive and accurate. Japan's very, they work hard, they have a strong work ethic, but it's also very very organized. Everything works. If you buy a Japanese product, it's good quality. It's got a good lifespan. Things are efficient. It's very organized and efficient in Japan. Whereas I find like in China sometimes, maybe more often than not, they seem very unorganized and very inefficient in spite of always being busy, and yet it feels like things are perpetually unorganized, disorganized. I feel like they don't plan ahead. Everything is last minute. It's happened to me many times that uh, first day of classes are tomorrow, and then I get my schedule for the first day of the semester, like midnight the day before, the night before.
You are totally right.
And it
Like,
blows my mind. I'm like, you're working nonstop, but nothing is organized. How is that possible?
I don't know. And whenever you ask how something works, like, hey, I need to get this paperwork, they're like, oh, I don't know. You just kind of do this, but sometimes this happens, and then sometimes this happens. And it's like, what? How
Right.
does this get done? I need to get something done. It's just, yeah. Did you want to do a quick save, man? 'Cause it's been a while.
Yeah.
Don't want to.
Yeah. Let me stop here so we don't lose
Cool.
any of this verbal gold.